Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be Test match fever yet again, which is going to be hitting our screens in the first week of February because it's these two men. It's, of course, going to be Joe Root, who's going to be bringing his England time to lock odds with Virat Kohli, who's not been in the thick of action so far after his first child, but only time will tell, of course, how these two lock horns, because let's face it, it's a marquee series. It's India versus England. There's so much emotion. There's so much stakes on this particular series with regards to the World Test Championship and lots more. So let's get cracking with our chat. We're going to be discussing about the series in store, in particular the test matches, which is a 4-test rubber, this one. Of course, 2 in Chennai and 2 in Ahmedabad. And it seems to be a riveting series, even though it's just a week before it's starting. On this particular program, we've got, of course, Harry Bell joining us. We've got Rakib Islam as well with his thoughts. Then we've got, of course, Bishan Jaswant and Somesh Agarwal. We'll have to start with Harry because, Harry, talk to me about England and India. When I first mentioned this series to you, what really comes across in your head?
Very much. It's odd because I've asked for some different questions, but this is a difficult series for England. It's probably the most difficult series that England could be coming up for, and there's been very good preparation in Sri Lanka, and we've learned a lot of lessons about the team. The big question is, are the spinners going to be able to get the wickets to bowl India out and win games? And do we have a batting lineup capable of getting big scores in that first innings and coming through the pressure that will ultimately come from a very strong Indian bowling attack?
Yeah, it makes for good reading this. The fact that whether England will chop and change going into this one, they have, of course, brilliant pace attack in Broad, Anderson. There's Archer, of course. Wood has been sent back home, but they have, I think, Ollie Stone in reserve, and then those spinners as well in terms of Crane, Parkinson, and Verdi. We'll get on to that in just a bit. Let's, of course, just put up the squad first and foremost. The Indian squad, as you guys can see on your bottom ticker. And there's no surprises there. Let's get Bishan Jaswant onto the stream and ask him whether there were any particular surprises in that test match selection. Bish, what's your first thought with this series squad that India have picked against England?
I think India have picked a strong squad, not too many surprises. Maybe slightly surprising was the pick of Akshar Patel, but I think even the selectors explained that it was between him and Shahbaz Nadeem, and you may have thought that India would go for an out-and-out spinner, considering that India have already picked Washington Sundar. He couldn't have been dropped after what he did for us in Australia. So he finds himself playing test matches for India despite having last played first-class cricket back in 2017. So great run for Washington Sundar. But apart from that, not a whole lot of surprises. I'm not sure what Hardik Pandya's selection tells us. Is it that he's going to bowl, or is it that the management thinks that he can play as a pure batsman in Indian conditions? It's going to be tricky to fit Hardik Pandya into that lineup. So it'll be interesting to see. But apart from, I think, maybe those couple of picks, the team really picks itself. It's a team that's been doing well.
Yeah, it's a team which has been doing well. Of course, they basked in that glory not too long ago in Down Under against Australia, and was epic series that, and we hope we get another one with regards to India versus England. Let's get Rakib Islam before I get Somesh Agarwal on. Rakib, coming to you right now with regards to this particular test series and how it's poised with the World Test Championship in the grander scheme of things. How you really looking at the series from an England perspective? Joe Root, of course, got the job done in Sri Lanka with his men out there. Is that the perfect shot in the arm for England to tour to India, which has always historically been a tough tour? So I'm coming to you right now. Talk to me about this Indian particular squad right now. I mean, Bish said lighten it. Are we really looking the strongest beat with Shubman Gill, of course, Washington Sundar, the new entrance as such into Test cricket? How do you really preview the series going into this 4-test match series?
Well, there is no doubt that we have a very strong squad. Uh, I mean, based on the number of injuries that we have, the only key player that we are missing out here is Ravi Jadeja. I mean, at least in Indian conditions, he's a proper spinner. He's not just an all-rounder. He's the He's as good a spinner as Ashwin is. So I guess that's one bowler that we might miss. But let's see how things cope up. I'll be surprised if we go ahead with both Ashwin and Washington Sundar. So probably we'll see a surprise there, and Akshar Patel might play. I remember in 2017 when England was here, one thing that Virat Kohli pointed out was that they knew that the English batsmen kind of do not trust their defense a lot, and at some point of time are bound to play that aggressive shot. And that is something that I'm really looking forward to. How the England batsmen basically learned from the 2017 tour. Most of them are still around, so let's see if they can up their defensive game against the Indian spinners. Importantly.
Yeah, it's vital that you mentioned no Jadeja. Of course, he would have been a handful considering what he's been bringing to this Indian team, not just with his spin bowling, but his balance as well. Rakib, let's get you on right now, and hopefully you're unmuted this time.
Yeah, sorry.
Talk to me about the series in general, because there's something about England coming to India and finding it really tough. Of course, 2012 was that exception case with Monty Pinasar and Graham Swan doing what they did. How do you really preview the series as a Test cricket fan going into this England winter, if you like it?
I mean, I think this is the big Test series around right now. I think, I'm an India supporter. I think England will always, playing England, whether it's in England or in India, will always be something special, for an Indian, because of what it means, because of the history, because of the lineage. And I think what's really interesting about this particular series is really much more from the England side. I personally believe India will win this reasonably simply. But for the England side, if the likes of Bess and Leach can come through and actually put a score in, if Crawley can demonstrate his skill in subcontinental conditions, because I believe Crawley's big scores will be necessary for them to win, then actually it will show that England are a side that can be a serious contender for the next World Test Championship as well, and that they can really play away from home. I think from the Indian side, they need to get that 2-0. I think there's some interesting questions about 5, 6, and 7 for them. Is Pant really a wicketkeeper in subcontinental conditions? Is Rahane going to do well? Because we need him to do well if we're to do well in the future. But his average in India is not particularly good. And I know we've talked about Washington Sundar, but he doesn't have a first class. He hasn't been playing first class cricket. I think that second spinner could be a problem for India. But for me also, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Rohit and Gill at the top of this batting order for India. I think if they can see out Anderson and Broad, be in for a very, very special set of opening batsmen playing for India in India, and it's going to be very, very good to watch.
It is going to be good to watch, and I think you just took the question that I was going to ask Harry next with regards to should Anderson and Broad start. Let's get Harry on with that ridiculous question, which has been plaguing every newspaper in England and in India right now. Harry, how do you view it with regards to these two? They're obviously coming to the twilight of their career. They've played so much of cricket, over 1,100 wickets between them, but they can't both possibly start that first Test in Chennai. How do you view it?
So obviously, England have spoken a lot about how they want to manage these two's workload because they're coming into a year with 16 Test matches, and Anderson's very old now. He's pushing into his late 30s. Broad's still got quite a few years left in him, but they're having constantly getting questions asked of them, and they're just answering them. And the control that both of them provided in Sri Lanka showed that they are our most important and best fast bowlers. And they've also been answering questions about whether or not they can bowl and adapt to the subcontinent. Broad particularly bowled some really smart deliveries on a pitch that wasn't helping much and took very important wickets at the top of the order. And Anderson did the same. And along with that, they had that control. What was also quite clear in that series was some of the other bowlers they were leaking runs at unnecessary moments, which was relieving pressure. The spinners also did that. And England are going into a big Test game in India, probably the toughest series, on the back of 5 away wins in a row. And whether or not they want to try and rotate them or not, they're the two marquee best controlling bowlers. Do you pick them both? And I think they should. I think they should go with Archer as well. But I think that those two probably should be on that team sheet for the first game.
Yeah, interesting. It'll be chopping and changing from a root perspective. Of course, no Bairstow, who played pretty well against that Sri Lankan spin attack in goal. He's, of course, going to be back in the scheme of things only after the first two tests. No Mark Wood, of course, that's another pacer gone out of there. But Moeen Ali has been mighty impressive. Let's get Bishan's thoughts on Moeen Ali and how he always has something against India, Bish. I mean, what is it about Moeen Ali? Because he's almost like a Ravindra Jadeja for England, which is bringing that balance, bowling the extra spin, and perhaps being the third spinner on this tour. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, Moeen has been tricky for India to play, not because he turns the ball a whole lot or he has a lot of variations, but I think mainly because he's so accurate, and he caught India by surprise the first time they played him, and he picked up a handful of wickets in England. Since then, India have played him much better, but Moeen has also developed as a bowler in that time. He's developed more variations. He's become more accurate. He varies his the flight and drift a little bit more. He's become a better bowler, and so he could definitely play the role of a third spinner and an all rounder. Going into that test, it's quite possible that England will play three spinners. With Moeen being the third spinner, then along with Bess and Leach. There were some questions about Bess and Leach when they didn't pick up a single wicket in that first innings at Gaul in the second test, but they came back well in the second innings and proved their worth. So you would expect that they will hold their place, but we'll have to wait and see. There's a whole lot of rotation in this England team now. While Sri Lanka was a good preparation for the India series, the team has changed a whole lot now. Coming into the Test series in India, for the first test, you could have 5 or 6 new players in that team, whether it's Jofra Archer, Ben Stokes, Ollie Pope, Moeen Ali. You could have Rory Burns, who was away for the birth of his child. You could have 5 or 6 different players. So yeah, they've had good preparation, but the players coming in, it's going to be difficult, especially because the new guys who've come in now have that's Stokes, Burns, and Moeen Ali, I think, have a little bit more time. Not Moeen Ali, someone else who's come in, have a little bit more time to prepare in Chennai. But the team that comes in from Sri Lanka will only have 2 or 3 days to prepare in Chennai because of the 5 or 6 day quarantine that they have to go through in India. So it's going to be tricky for them. It's not going to be easy at all, despite the preparation in Sri Lanka and the practice they've had and the good results. It's a different team. They have less time. It's going to be tough.
It is going to be tough, and one man will, of course, be leading England by all means, even with the bat in hand. That's, of course, this man with regards to his impeccable average against India in general, but on Indian soil too, he averages about 53 plus, registering a best of 124. I think that came against Rajkot in that first test in 2016. So it'll be deja vu if Root can really emulate what he did up there in Gujarat, but in Chennai this time around. So I'm coming to you right now. India versus Australia was an immense series. It was a watershed moment for many cricketers. Who do you really think will probably trickle into this lineup, given their performances there, given their form that they've had? Is it Mohammad Siraj? Is it someone like a Washington Sundar? Who is it going to be? Who's that X factor? Or Shubman Gill, who you've been a big fan of? I think you're mute, so you're mute.
Yeah. you nailed it the third time around. I'm really looking forward to watch Shubman Gill in Indian conditions. He earned the place by batting well in those tricky Australian conditions, and now this is the time you capitalize and actually make your average soar higher and probably get a couple of tons or even a double ton under your name. So I think Shubman Gill is going to be one player to watch out for. I would have said Rishabh Pant as well, but I'm not sure if he's going to get a lot of games. I think since we're playing in India and specifically in Chennai, I think Ridhiman Sai is going to start. So my man, so 2 players I'm looking forward to are Shubman Gill, and B, it's going to be first time ever that Bumrah plays on Indian soil. So I'm looking forward to see him ball with that red ball in Indian conditions.
I mean, something that you valuably mentioned over there. Let's just stick with you a little bit longer, because I remember reading a lovely piece that you wrote on our platform, cricket.com, with regards to the qualification scenarios for the World Test Championship. Now, India just need to avoid any sort of drubbing to make that final at Lords. But what else is at stake? So can you give us a little bit more light from an England perspective, what they need to do to perhaps make that final in Lords?
For England, it's very straightforward. They need to win either 3-0 or 4-0. Even if they win 3-1, they'll be out of the contention.
and that'll be history in some sort, right? If they do 3-1 or 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, see, after what India did in Australia, you cannot rule anything out. But there is another slight possibility. If Australia get hammered in South Africa, then probably even a less favorable result, like even a, not sure if 2-0 or something like that might work for England. But for that, Australia will have to get hammered 3-0 in South Africa.
Okay, let's see how it works out. We'll get your predictions and all your predictions in just a bit. Rakib, let's come to you right now, because what I want to understand is a question that England fans have been asking time and time and again. The fact that they've, of course, done well in South Africa, they did well in Sri Lanka, but these are the big series for an English cricketer. Of course, the Ashes is there, but if they do well in India, what is going to be their key to success, you feel, with this current England crop that they have?
Well, if they're going to do well, I sort of mentioned it before. I think for them to do well, Best, Leach, Ali, whoever plays, will all need to take wickets, and they'll need to have low economies. I think, and I'm going to have to go for Crawley over Lawrence, for instance, at 4 or 5. I think they're going to need Crawley to bat big. I think they're going to need him to bat big, like he got that 200 plus against Pakistan. They're going to need him to bat big. I think Root will do well, but he also did, as you said, he averages over 50, and England lost 4-0 last time. I think, as I said before, Burns and Sibley, if they can come in and stay, and they, between them, they can be at 100 for 1, they're in the game. But if they lose those 2 wickets early, they expose that that middle order, which is filled with stroke players, to the likes of Sharma, Siraj, and Bumrah. I think it could be pretty devastating for England. So I would say they need to do really well early on. I think Crawley needs to have a great series, and I think their spinners have to take wickets. I mean, it's what you need to do in India, really. It's whether or not they can actually do it. They have a lot of debutants in that side, especially in Indian conditions. The one thing I think that's really good for them, though, is there's not going to be a crowd. So, everyone knows this. 4th or 5th day, big crowd, 5-6 players around the bat. It's a very, very different kind of atmosphere.
It is. It's going to be some sort of different, unique test match in Chennai, because normally it's always back to the rafters out there in the Chidambaram Stadium. Harry, coming to you right now, with regards to this particular England setup that they have to draw inspiration from that 2012 series. You look at what Monty Panesar did. I think Jack Leach can certainly take a page out of what he did in that particular series. Be it even Graham Swan and what Dom Bess has been achieving for England in his short little career. He got a 6 in Port Elizabeth. He got a 5 I think, in Gaul. Can he continue those strings of performances and not just be a great Somerset spinner?
If he bowls like he did for that 5 in Gaul, then I don't think he'll be getting those 5s against India. Again, unless the quicks keep it really, really tight and the Indians go after him and make mistakes. For me, though, yeah, Rax is absolutely right. England have got some real marquee all-star players like Root, like Stokes, potentially Archer. And to win, we need 3 or 4 people to take a grasp on this series and say, this is my series and my performance here is going to be remembered for years to come, like Peterson, Cook and Swan Panesar did. And one of them has to be at least a spinner who will go in and take a lot of wickets. It remains to be seen whether or not one of them will stand up and be counted. But at the moment, it could really be any of them. It is a moment to solidify who is going to be England's first choice spinner in English conditions in the summer and for years to come.
Yeah, only time will tell, of course, how much confidence they can take through, because it's going to be a packed calendar from an England cricket perspective. They, I think, have New Zealand at home for a couple of tests before they have India, and then they have the Ashes later this year. Right, we're nearly done with this chat. I really want to throw in some sort of controversial questions for all the panelists to answer right now. So let's get all of them on the screen one by one. Guys, we have to decide who's the best batsman, Joe Root or Virat Kohli. Harry, we'll let you go first.
Sorry to come in from the English perspective early and ruin the whole game. Kohli's better than Root. I don't think I can say much more about that. I'd love Root to become a better player.
Does anyone disagree with this? Because look, Root has been in terrific form. That 228 in Gaul. I mean, I know it wasn't really the best Sri Lankan attack that we've seen in years, but still, I mean, Som, you want to comment on this? Is there no competition whatsoever?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to accept that Kohli is a much better batsman than Root. I mean, he's all round, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, Rakib, come in.
No, I was going to say, like, the only reason I think Kohli's better as well, but I think that Kohli's better in Test cricket because he's been converting over the last 2 or 3 years. Root has no real technical deficiencies. I have no idea why he hasn't been converting for the last few years. But if he continues in that vein, then he will be right back up there with Kohli, and behind, I'm afraid, Smith. But right now, over the last sort of 2, 3, 4 years, I think you can say that Kohli has had more iconic performances, and he's just converted better. This is the first time in some time that Root has converted into scores worthy of his skill.
Yeah, Harry, before I just come to you, because I know you're politely raising your hand, Bish, is it even a debate, this, Virat or Joe? Yeah, Bish?
I really don't think so, Avanish. If you see the global discussion at this point, there is no longer even a talk of the big four.
Yeah.
All the talk now is of the big three, and Joe Root's not in contention to break into that big three at this point. Unless he keeps batting the way he's been batting in Sri Lanka and racks Virat Kohli, he won't make the top three. There's an argument today for the best Test batsman to be Kane Williamson over even Virat Kohli and Steve Smith. That's arguable, but between Virat and Joe Root, I think it's definitely Virat Kohli, especially since he's worked on his game over a period of time. There was criticism of him that he wasn't making big scores, and he answered that by scoring double hundreds in 5 back-to-back series. There's similar criticism of Joe Root that he's not able to convert those 50s into hundreds, and it looks like he's beginning to answer that now, albeit against a fairly weak Sri Lankan bowling attack. But let's see how long he can keep that up. But for now, there's no discussion.
Yeah, no discussion. I'm sure this next question is going to be a discussion. India versus England. Who's winning this Test series? Rakib, we'll start with you.
I'm going to say 3-0 India, potentially. Depending on how the pitch plays, I think, and how the ball moves for the day-night test. But I think 3-0 is a fair score. I think there might be a slight advantage for England where if India win 2-0, they might think about that New Zealand game and rest some players. Because we keep getting injuries. Over the last few series, we keep getting injuries.
I mean, only food for thought. That only time will tell. Of course, Harry, 3-0. Do you think that's going to be doing disservice to Joe Root and his team out there?
I think 3-0 would be a par score, and England will be looking to get something much better than that. I think that there are obviously clear deficiencies in that India team that England can look to target. I don't think the spin attack is as good as it could be, and Ashwin will be very effective against the left-handers. But again, as Rax has mentioned, we want those right-handers to come in and score big. So there are definitely opportunities, and if England lose this series, in a close series, they'll see it as a missed opportunity. But as we all know, I mean, if the confidence gets shot in that first couple of games, we could see 3 or 4 debuts in those later tests in the series.
Yeah, and it's never easy to play catch-up cricket in the subcontinent. I'm sure South Africa just learned that after their terrible defeat in Karachi. Lastly, gentlemen, before we just wrap up the discussion, I just want one-word answers from you all. Who's going to be the man of the series with regards to the Test series between India and England? Any player that you guys reckon? Have a go right now. We'll start with Bish.
I'm going to say it's Virat Kohli because he's going to be really hungry to stamp his authority on this team once more. There's a bit of talk going around now about Ajinkya Rahane possibly being Indian captain in the long run in Tests. 3 captains in 3 different formats, etc. He wasn't part of the historic series win in Australia. He'll be really, really hungry to make his presence felt. And I can see some big hundreds from Virat Kohli coming up.
So, you agree with that? He got a 235 at the Wankhede the last time out, which was simply majestic. Do you think there'll be something of an encore for Virat?
Well, I'm going to go with Rohit Sharma.
The Mumbai Indians fan that you are.
Wow.
I mean, see, Indian conditions, if England new ball bowlers are not going to get him out early, he's going to be a menace. He's somebody who can score hundreds in a session. So,
but will he carry on from the 40s and 50s that he gets, my friend?
see, in India, we've seen last time when South Africa were here, he was scoring double hundreds for fun. So I guess if he notches a couple of them up, he'll be the ideal candidate for man of the series.
Okay, Harry's sniggering over there. I'm pretty sure it's no Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma for him, but someone like Jofra Archer or Joe Root, or am I completely wrong?
I'm just going to go with Stokes. He loves India, and he's the person who can turn up and switch the game with those big moments. And he's going to need to do it. He's going to need to do it in at least 2 tests as well. I mean, he did it in England against Australia, and we still lost the series begrudgingly. But yeah, we need some big performances in the big moments, and he is the big character to turn up for the event and take the game to India.
Yeah, I mean, he's had all the experience of playing in Indian pitches, and of course, he's delivered in the past. Not too long ago, of course, we can trace back that South Africa spell that he really put his heart out. Rakib, I'll come to you, and then we'll finish with Bishan. Who's your particular man of the series prediction in this India-England Test series that awaits us?
I'm going to go a bit left field. I'm going to go for Shubman Gill because, well, I mean, I think he's such a special cricket player, but I also think, having watched Broad and Anderson against Sri Lanka, I do think they've got a chance against Rohit, whereas Gill looked so much more comfortable against Australia, where in same conditions, for the first 10, 15 overs, it does swing. And so I think Gill has a higher capability to do that. And then I think he can take apart the rest of that England attack. And I think he could be in for a very, very special series.
Yeah, I mean, he was bullying Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins in their own backyard. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do that to the English attack. Bish, you wanted to come in finally to wrap it
up? Just one point to make in terms of leveling up the playing field for the series. Ahmedabad's a brand new venue. No one's ever played there before, and it could be a really flat wicket if it's something like Rajkot, and which makes winning a test match for any team really difficult. So that could play to England's strength. It may be difficult for India to win 3 or 4 test matches if the pitches in Ahmedabad are really, really flat and don't aid spin and turn out to be really batting beauties. So that's to keep in mind. And so I think England could really, with their batting, Joe Root, Ben Stokes, I expect them to pull off 1 test. I don't think England will go back from the series empty-handed. I expect them to win 1 test on the weight of resolute batting from the likes of Root and Stokes.
Yeah, Roots and Stokes is certainly going to be so important for the visitors this time around. Only time will tell, of course, if it's going to be 3-0 like the gentleman suggested, or whether it's going to be completely a game of cricket where, it's going to be a tight series, maybe a 2-2, 3-2 sort of event out there. We appreciate your time, gentlemen. We'll probably catch you throughout the course of the series, fingers crossed, given the fact that all you guys have other jobs to, of course, tend to as well, but we'll let it be. And we appreciate your time, like I said. So there you have it. Harry Bell, Bishan Jaswant, Somesh Agarwal, and Rakib Islam joining us with regards to this India-England fantastic series preview and the early predictions that they've got themselves in. Only time will tell, of course, what will come out in this one. Thanks for watching. Cricket.com. I'm Avanish Hegde, signing off. Cheers, guys. Thank you.